Okay, I might as well get started. Today I want to talk about a book by Rinko Kawauchi. It's called Light and Shadow, Hikari to Kage in Japanese. And I don't think it's the most well-known book of hers, but I think it shows her doing what she does best, I think. Rinko Kawauchi became very famous, very popular after her initial series of books. And I don't know, this sounds a little harsh, but I think she sort of lost part of what made her really good with her later work. There were also a number of books published that were sort of very grandiose and pompous, and I don't think that really works so well with her work. For example, if you go back to 2001, this is one of the three books that was published in 2001. This is Utatane, her claim to fame. And it shows her, by the way, notice the colors, the blues here. It shows her really doing what she does best, which is to take her square camera and to focus on these very, very small moments, these very small, gentle, delicate moments of life and make pictures out of them. I think that's probably a good way to describe this photographer, at least the work that I like. Now, after she got well known in Japan, here's a later book, this is from 2005, and I think that's already where it started to sort of, where it started to go a little astray. So this started to mix in all kinds of other things, including her own writing, which I wouldn't have minded. So there's like these poems here. But I think where it got really unsuccessful was when, the inclusion of contact sheets, and then all kinds of other formats. There's some, I don't know if I can find this quickly. So these different formats. It's all still good, but I think it's sort of like getting away from what made the work really strong in the beginning. Because this gentleness is really something that is a strength, and I realized that as a photographer you have to maybe fight the urge to make the same pictures over and over and over again. But you also, I think, have to realize that some things just don't work out the same way that maybe you want them to work out. And I don't know how she would feel about this, about my read. Regardless, this book, I picked this book because I think it's a very good book. It's not very well known, and it's also a book for our times. I don't have to talk about the times. It's pretty much obvious. But this book was published in 2012, a year after the earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan. Northeastern Japan, and caused a lot of destruction and death. And like many photographers, Rinko Kawauchi went to the regions and tried to photographed. And I think all in all, the work that I've seen coming out of the Japanese photography community has been very, very strong. Whether it's covering Fukushima or the tsunami hit areas. And Rinko Kawauchi's work really is no exception. And I wanted to show you this today. So it's a very, very simple book in the way that it's just the title here. It's literally always just one picture on the right hand side, and that's it. It's not the square format, it doesn't really matter. So you see this overview. You've seen these kinds of pictures, of course, coming out of Japan, and she starts out with this big overview of the city and then going into the destroyed city or village or whatever this area is. And you're probably familiar with these kinds of pictures. And then this is already interesting, I think, because the temptation might have been to just show more and more destruction, but she also shows spring, the famous cherry blossoms. So there is this contrast already being set up here in this book between the destruction and the beauty and the reemergence of nature. And then in the next picture you see these two birds over this pile of rubbish, and if you look closely you see one of them is white and one of them is black. So these are two pigeons, and these are the two characters of this book, these two pigeons, and you get to see them. They belong together in some way, they fly together, they live together, and you see them fly and interact in this landscape. And I think it really takes a certain type of photographer to not look at all the destruction and instead notice these two birds and then start photographing these birds. And I think that's exactly what makes Rinko Kawauchi such a strong and interesting photographer, that she would, of all people, notice these birds and then actually turn these birds and the photographs of these two pigeons into the main focus of a book. They have, it's a little hard to see, I mean you're not going to be able to see it on your phone, but these birds have, they're wearing little braces or whatever that's called on their legs here, so they were domesticated. Clearly they probably lost their home, but they stayed together. In black and white, I don't have to explain the dichotomy and the meaning and the possible meaning, the metaphor in these birds. So you see them fly. Here you see the ring around the legs. And sometimes, you know, actually oftentimes I think the best photography is just the simplest photography. The photography that just works with this one very, very simple idea and fleshes it out and shows it. Because I say this a lot, especially to my students, simple is not the same as simplistic. Simple is just beautiful. Of course, this is maybe, you know, with Japan also an idea of, you know, the simplicity, keeping things very much reduced to the basic elements. So there's always that aspect. And I think that's a very good lesson for all of photography, to sort of stay with simple ideas and flesh them out, because simple can be incredibly meaningful. If you overload something with all these big ideas and all these different types of things, then it just becomes way too complicated. So we've seen these birds interact in this landscape, and now the question, of course, for any kind of book person is like, how is this going to end? So you see the rain here on the, and you see this mix. This is something, an echo of something you've seen earlier. The cherry blossoms with, you know, this, again, this dichotomy, the destruction and nature re-emerging. This is, looks like it's sideways, but you know, it doesn't really matter. You could turn the book, but I think it works this way too. This fissure in the ground, again separating our two areas. The destroyed landscape, these houses, mangled up cars. Just very, very basic ideas. You know, you could, like if you were to describe this, this almost sounds like beginner's photography, you know, but it kind of is in a way, but that's the beauty of simplicity. You know, a really good artist will bring this all together and make something deeply meaningful in just a few pictures. You don't need to overload, as I said that before, you overload all your photography with all these ideas. Just hit the right note and then work it out. And then, you know, you go towards night here. It's kind of a reflection in this glass. The sun, of course, is a symbol for Japan as well. The flag of Japan is the sun. And then you see the night sky. And that's it, right? That's the book. That's all you need. Like, very simple. There's one more picture, I think, in the end. This little statue photographed against the sun. I think these are little kids. So that's the book, and it talks about so much with so few means. I think that's really what makes us very, very strong. You know, this metaphor of light and shadow, dark bird and the white bird, the destruction, the re-emergence of nature. That's all there is to it. So I think this is a very good book, and I don't want to say a good lesson, but you know, especially in these times with all the stuff going on, all the shit going on in the world and the virus and everything, you know, it's really important to just focus on that there is, you know, that something else, and you know, it's kind of also up to us to sort of make that happen, and you know, especially if we make photographs or write something or produce anything, it's up to us to show that and to really realize that, you know, there is darkness, but there is also light, and you can find it anywhere where you look. You just have to be perceptive to it. And I think that's really what makes Rinko Kawauchi such an interesting photographer, because she's incredibly perceptive to these little things that otherwise would go unnoticed. And of course, in a sense, every photographer does that. That's what makes photography art. You know, you are perceptive to something, but this gentle touch and this delicacy, that's not something I think that you would find in a lot of other photographers. This doesn't mean that other photographers aren't good. They're good for different things, of course. But I think the unique strength of Rinko Kawauchi is to sort of bring out this gentle touch in the world and to show us that, you know, wherever you go, even if it's in a destroyed area, there's beauty to be had and there is something to be seen and something to be experienced.